Rain lashed against the living room windows, mimicking the storm brewing inside me. "Mom, we need to talk about the house," Amanda said, her voice tight. Julian stood beside her, a silent, looming presence. "I thought we agreed you'd sign it over after the wedding." I looked at them, my own son Michael hovering nervously in the background, and felt a chill deeper than the November rain. "Agreed, Amanda. We never agreed on anything of the sort." She let out a sigh, that theatrical kind she'd perfected, and perched on the edge of the sofa as if she owned the place. "Look, it's just easier this way, for everyone." Julian cleared his throat. "Dorothy, with respect, Amanda and Michael need to start their lives together. This house eats a lot for you to manage." I felt my hands clench. Manage. I'd managed this house, raised my children here, tended the garden with my own two hands for over 40 years. "I managed just fine," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Amanda gave a small, dismissive laugh. "Mom, you forgot our lunch date last week. You misplaced your keys twice yesterday. It's time." "Time for what?" "To be shunted aside, deemed incompetent, erased." "I think," Julian interjected smoothly, pulling a folded document from his briefcase, "it's best if we finalize this now." He spread the papers on the coffee table, the stark black ink a jarring contrast against the warm wood. My name, printed in bold at the bottom, mocked me. "This just needs your signature," Amanda said, her tone saccharine sweet. "Then everything will be sorted. Everything. My home, my memories, my independence. All neatly packaged and ready for them to take." "Amanda," Michael finally spoke, his voice low and hesitant. "Are you sure about this?" Mom seems he trailed off, unable to meet my gaze. Amanda shot him a look that could curdle milk. "Michael, don't. This is for the best. We've discussed it. Discussed how to best dispossess me, more like." I watched them, this tableau of betrayal, and a quiet resolve began to harden within me. I would not be bullied. I would not be erased. "I'll sign," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Amanda's face lit up, a triumphant glint in her eyes. Julian beamed, gathering up a pen. "Excellent, Dorothy. Very sensible." "Sensible?" "Yes, perhaps I was. Perfect timing." I continued, my voice still calm. "But let's make a quick stop at the police station first." The smiles faltered. Amanda's brow furrowed. "Police station? Mom, what are you talking about?" "Well," I said, picking up my handbag, a certain heaviness settling at the bottom, reassuring me. "I want to report a theft." Julian sputtered. "A theft? What theft?" "My deed," I replied, holding up a small, worn leather-bound book. "The one that proves I own this house, free and clear. The one that seems to have gone missing." I saw the blood drain from Amanda's face. Michael looked bewildered, caught in the crossfire. Don't understand," she stammered. "This is ridiculous." I opened the book, revealing not only the deed, but a cancelled check, the down payment from decades ago, and tucked inside, a power of attorney, my signature freshly inked, granting me full control of my own finances. I met Amanda's gaze, the triumph I felt a stark contrast to the fear flickering in her eyes. "Oh, I think you do understand, Amanda." "I understand perfectly." I turned to Michael, my heart aching for the son I thought I knew. Michael, perhaps you should have a little chat with your wife. I believe you have some things to discuss. I walked toward the door, the rain outside no longer mirroring the storm within me. The storm had passed, and the sun, I sensed, was about to break through the clouds. I had one more stop to make before I could truly rest easy. A visit to someone who understood the importance of securing one's future, especially when family couldn't be relied upon. And after Fatwell, let's just say Amanda and Julian's honeymoon might be slightly less luxurious than they had anticipated. Rain lashed against the windows of my own living room. 2 days after the wedding, 2 days after Amanda, my daughter-in-law, had stood up in that crowded reception hall and painted me as a doddering old fool. We're so grateful to Mom for everything, she'd said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. She's always been a little forgetful lately, but she means well. A ripple of laughter went through the room. My son, Michael, just stood there, a nervous smile plastered on his face. He didn't even look at me. Isn't that right, Mom? Amanda had said, turning to me with a sickly sweet smile. I managed a week. Of course, dear. What else could I say? My own son had abandoned me to the wolves. The humiliation burned in my chest, a slow, simmering rage that was just beginning to build. Now, here I sat, in what I still stubbornly thought of as my house, listening to the rhythmic drumming of the rain and the even more rhythmic drumming of my own anxious heart. The doorbell shrieked, slicing through the quiet like a knife. I hesitated. Who could it be? I peered through the peephole and saw a woman in a sharp business suit, a severe briefcase clutched in her hand. I cautiously opened the door. Mrs. Dorothy Miller, the woman asked, her voice brisk and professional. Yes, I replied, my voice trembling slightly. I'm Patricia Jenkins, she said, extending a hand. I'm an attorney representing Amanda and Michael. My stomach dropped. Amanda wasn't wasting any time. What can I do for you, Miss Jenkins? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ms. Jenkins stepped inside, uninvited. We're concerned about your well-being, Mrs. Miller, she said, her eyes scanning my living room. Amanda mentioned your forgetfulness. We think it might be time for you to consider assisted living. Assisted living, I repeated, my voice rising. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Of course, Miss Jenkins said smoothly, pulling some papers from her briefcase. But it's always better to be proactive, especially at your age. Amanda and Michael have found a lovely facility not far from here. They've already looked into it. She placed the papers on my coffee table. This is the paperwork. They've generously offered to cover all the expenses. I glanced down at the documents, admission forms, financial disclosures. It was all there, laid out in black and white. They were trying to put me away, to steal my house, everything I had worked for my entire life. This is ridiculous, I said, my voice shaking with anger. I'm not going anywhere. Miss Jenkins sighed. Mrs. Miller, I understand this is difficult, but it's for your own good. Amanda and Michael are worried about you. They want to make sure you're safe and well cared for. Safe, I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Safe from whom? From you, from them? I pointed at the papers. This isn't about my safety. This is about my house. This is about my money. Miss Jenkins didn't flinch. Mrs. Miller, you're clearly agitated. Perhaps we should discuss this another time. No, I said, my voice firm. We'll discuss it now. You tell Amanda and Michael that I'm not signing anything. This is my house. I bought it. I paid for it. And I'm not leaving. We have documentation suggesting otherwise. Miss Jenkins said, her voice hardening. Amanda informed me that you've been having difficulty managing your finances. She's worried about you making unwise decisions. Unwise decisions. I repeated, the anger boiling inside me, like giving my own son a down payment on a house, like helping him and his wife furnish it. Those kind of unwise decisions. Miss Jenkins's smile faltered for a moment. Mrs. Miller, we're simply trying to help. I don't need your help. I snapped. I need you to leave. I picked up the papers and thrust them back at her. Take these with you and tell Amanda and Michael that I'll see them in court. Miss Jenkins took the papers, her face tight. Very well, Mrs. Miller, she said. Her voice clipped. We'll be in touch. She turned and walked out, her heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. I closed the door behind her, leaning against it, my heart pounding. They thought they could just waltz in here and take everything from me. They thought I was some senile old woman they could manipulate and control. They were wrong, dead wrong. I went to my desk, pulled out a file, and began to go through the documents inside. The deed to my house, the canceled check for Michael's down payment, the power of attorney I had foolishly given him, thinking he would always have my best interests at heart. I looked at the documents, a slow smile spreading across my face. They thought they were so clever, but I had a few tricks up my sleeve, too, and I was just getting started. They wanted a fight. They were going to get one. This wasn't just about the house anymore. This was about my dignity, my life, and I wasn't going down without a fight. The rain continued to beat against the windows, but inside, a different kind of storm was brewing, a storm of quiet resolve, a storm of revenge. Rain lashed against my living room window, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. Mom, it's for the best, Michael said, his voice strained. Amanda, and I think it's time you considered assisted living. My heart plummeted. Just 3 months after their wedding, after Amanda had so sweetly suggested I downsize to this smaller apartment to be closer to them, here they were, trying to push me out entirely. I clutched my teacup, the porcelain warm against my trembling fingers. Assisted living? Michael, I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. Amanda, perched on the edge of my sofa like a preening bird, chimed in, Mom, we're worried. You've been forgetful lately. It's just for your own safety. Forgetful. I'd misremembered a dinner date once, a single instance they'd latched onto like a lifeline. Amanda, I appreciate your concern, I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. But I assure you, my memory is just fine. I forced a smile, a brittle, fragile thing. Michael shifted uncomfortably. He wouldn't meet my eyes. We found a lovely place, Mom, he mumbled, pulling a brochure from his pocket. The Meadows. It has excellent care. Activities. His voice trailed off as he saw the expression on my face. I didn't need their pity. their thinly veiled attempts to control my life. This wasn't about my well-being. It was about my apartment, about the money they thought they could get their hands on once I was gone. Michael, I said, my voice low and steady, I'm not going anywhere. Amanda's smile faltered. But, Mom, she protested, it's for your own good. I stood up, my small frame suddenly filled with a strength I hadn't known I possessed. My own good, as you put it, is to stay right here, in my own home. I gestured around the apartment, at the familiar furniture, the photographs on the walls, the books lining the shelves. This was my space, my sanctuary, and I wouldn't let them take it from me. We've already spoken to a lawyer, Amanda said, her voice laced with a newfound steeliness. He'll be here tomorrow to discuss your options. Options. I had only one option, and that was to stay put. I met her gaze, my own eyes unwavering. I'll see your lawyer tomorrow, Amanda, but I doubt he'll tell me anything I don't already know. The lawyer, a slick, overly confident young man named Mr. Henderson, arrived the following afternoon. He sat across from me, his briefcase open on the coffee table, filled with documents I assumed were meant to intimidate me. Mrs. Dorothy Evans, he began, his voice smooth and practiced. I understand your children are concerned about your well-being. Children. Michael was my child. Amanda was an opportunistic interloper. Mr. Henderson, I replied, my well-being is my own concern. He smiled condescendingly. Of course, but sometimes, as we get older, we need a little assistance. He pulled out a document, sliding it across the table towards me. This is a petition for guardianship. Your children feel it's in your best interest. Have someone manage your affairs. Manage my affairs. They wanted to control my life, my finances, everything I'd worked for. The anger simmering beneath the surface threatened to boil over. Mr. Henderson, I said, keeping my voice even, I appreciate your time, but I'm not signing anything. He raised an eyebrow. I assure you, Mrs. Evans, this is the best course of action. Your children simply want to make sure you're taken care of. My children, I repeated, emphasizing the word, can show their concern in other ways. I don't need a guardian. He leaned forward, his tone turning slightly sharper. Mrs. Evans, we have reason to believe you're no longer capable of managing your finances. There have been discrepancies. Discrepancies. What discrepancies? I knew exactly where every penny of my money was. This was a blatant attempt to paint me as incompetent, to justify their takeover of my life. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice steady, I'd like you to leave now. He hesitated, clearly surprised by my defiance. He glanced at the closed door of my bedroom, perhaps expecting Michael to emerge and back him up. But Michael wasn't there. He'd left me to face this alone. Mr. Henderson finally gathered his papers, his smug smile replaced by a look of annoyance. Very well, Mrs. Evans, but I assure you, we'll be in touch. He left, his parting words echoing in the quiet apartment. I sat there for a long time, the rain still drumming against the window pane. I felt a deep, bone-chilling loneliness, but beneath the sadness, a flicker of resolve began to burn. They thought they could outsmart me, take what was mine. They had underestimated me. I wouldn't let them win. I had a plan, a way to protect myself, and it involved more than just this apartment. It involved everything they thought they were entitled to. The game, as they say, was just beginning. They thought I was fading, becoming forgetful. They thought I was a pushover. They were about to find out just how wrong they were. They had awakened something in me, a steeliness I hadn't known I possessed. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I would have the last laugh. This wasn't about revenge, not entirely. It was about justice. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. And I knew, with growing anticipation, that Christmas this year would be interesting. Rain lashed against the church windows, a relentless drumming that mirrored the anxiety churning in my stomach. "Mom, you're shaking," Michael whispered, squeezing my hand. "It'll be all right." He smiled, that same sweet, trusting smile he'd had since he was a boy. But I knew it wouldn't be all right. Not with Amanda, and her sugary smiles hiding something sharp and cold beneath. I'd seen the way she looked at me, the subtle dismissiveness in her eyes, the way she'd subtly correct my grammar or remind me of things I'd supposedly forgotten. The wedding ceremony itself was a blur of white lace and murmured vows. I tried to focus on Michael's happiness, on the solemnity of the occasion, but Amanda's voice, sharp and clear, cut through the reverent hush during the reception. "Isn't it wonderful that Michael's mom could be here with us today?" she'd said, her arm looped possessively through his. "We're so grateful she's still with it enough to enjoy the celebration." A ripple of laughter, uneasy and forced, went through the crowd. The thinly veiled insult hung in the air, a poisonous cloud tainting the champagne and canapes. I felt my cheeks flush with shame. "Of course, dear," I managed, my voice trembling slightly. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." Inside, though, a cold knot of anger was tightening. This wasn't the first time Amanda had implied I was losing my grip, becoming senile. It was a slow, insidious campaign, chipping away at my independence, making others question my competence. Michael, bless his heart, seemed oblivious. He just squeezed my hand again, his eyes full of love for his new bride. "You look beautiful, Mom," he said, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling around us. Later, during the dancing, Amanda pulled me aside, her smile fixed and brittle. "Mom," she began, her voice low, "we need to talk about your situation." My heart sank. I knew what was coming. "What situation, dear?" I asked, feigning ignorance. She sighed dramatically, as if burdened by a great weight. "Well, the house, for one," she said, her eyes flitting around the room, as if searching for eavesdroppers. "It's a lot for you to manage on your own, isn't it? So much upkeep, so many bills." I stiffened. The house was my sanctuary, the place where I'd raised Michael, filled with memories both joyful and bittersweet. I wasn't giving it up without a fight. "I managed just fine. Thank you," I said, trying to keep my voice level. Amanda's smile tightened. "But wouldn't it be easier, safer, if you were somewhere more suitable? Somewhere with assistance?" She patted my hand condescendingly. "We've been looking into some lovely assisted living facilities. Think of it, Mom, no more worries, no more responsibilities, just peace and quiet." Her words dripped with false concern, but I saw the glint of greed in her eyes. She wanted the house. She wanted everything. I appreciate your concern, Amanda, I said, forcing a smile. But I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself and my home. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, her smile faltering. That night, unable to sleep, I replayed the events of the day in my mind. Amanda's words echoed in my ears, each one a tiny barb designed to undermine me, to make me doubt myself. She was trying to paint me as a doddering old woman, someone incapable of managing her own affairs. And the worst part was, I could see her plan working. People were starting to believe her. They were starting to look at me with pity, with concern. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. Was this it? Was this how my story ended, stripped of my dignity, my independence, my home? I closed my eyes, tears welling up. No, I thought fiercely. I wouldn't let her win. I wouldn't let her take everything I'd worked for, everything I held dear. The next day, a lawyer arrived at my door, a stern-faced woman with a briefcase full of documents. Mrs. Dorothy Miller, she asked. I'm here on behalf of Amanda and Michael regarding your living arrangements. My stomach churned. Amanda wasn't wasting any time. Please come in, I said, leading her into the living room. The lawyer explained, in dry, legalistic terms, that Amanda and Michael were concerned about my well-being, that they believed I was no longer capable of living independently. She presented me with papers to sign, papers that would effectively hand over control of my life, my finances, my home to them. I'm not signing anything, I said, my voice firm. The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Miller, I understand this is difficult, but it's for your own good. Your family is worried about you. My family, I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Amanda isn't my family. She's a manipulative woman trying to steal my house. The lawyer looked uncomfortable. I assure you, Mrs. Miller, this is all being done with your best interests at heart. My best interests, I retorted. My best interest is to keep my home, my independence, and my dignity, and I intend to do just that. I stood up, my hands trembling slightly. I suggest you leave, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed fury, before I call the police and have you escorted out. The lawyer, flustered, gathered her papers and left. As I watched her go, a flicker of hope ignited within me. I might be down, but I wasn't out. I had something Amanda didn't, years of experience, a lifetime of lessons learned, and a steel will forged in the fires of adversity. I knew what I had to do. I went to my safe and retrieved the documents. I'd carefully preserved the deed to my house, the canceled check proving I'd paid it off years ago, the power of attorney I'd never revoked. Amanda thought she was clever, but she'd underestimated me. She'd underestimated the lengths a mother would go to protect what was hers. The fight was far from over. I had a plan, and it was time to put it into action. The wedding, the humiliation, the lawyer, they were all just fuel for the fire that was now burning inside me. A fire of righteous anger, a fire of quiet resolve. And Amanda was about to get burned. The sunlight streaming through my kitchen window felt mockingly cheerful. Just yesterday, in this very room, Amanda had the audacity to tell me I was lucky. They were letting me stay in my own home. After all, Mom, she'd said, her voice dripping with false sweetness, you're getting a bit forgetful. Now, barely 12 hours later, the doorbell chimed, and I knew exactly who it would be. Amanda, radiating self-satisfaction, stood on my doorstep, flanked by a stern-looking man in a suit. "Good morning, Dorothy," she chirped, as if nothing untoward had happened the day before. "This is Mr. Henderson, our lawyer." Mr. Henderson gave a curt nod. "We're here to finalize the arrangements we discussed." Arrangements? I feigned confusion, though my heart pounded with a mix of anger and anticipation. "I don't recall discussing any arrangements." Amanda sighed dramatically. "Mom, really, we talked about this. It's for your own good. This house is too much for you to manage on your own. We've found a lovely assisted living facility, Meadowbrook Glen. Mr. Henderson has the paperwork for you to sign, transferring ownership of the house to Michael and me, and authorizing your move." "Transferring ownership," I repeated, my voice rising slightly. "This is my house. I paid for it." "Now, Dorothy," Mr. Henderson began, his tone condescending, "I understand this can be a difficult transition, but your daughter-in-law assures me you're no longer capable of managing your own affairs." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a sheaf of papers. "Just sign here, here, and here." I took the papers, pretending to study them carefully. My fingers trembled slightly, but not from fear, from excitement. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. "These papers state that I'm voluntarily transferring ownership of my house to Amanda and Michael," I said slowly, "and that I agree to move to Meadowbrook Glen." "Yes, precisely," Mr. Henderson said, a smug smile playing on his lips. "It's all very straightforward." "It certainly is," I replied, my voice now steady, straightforwardly fraudulent. Amanda gasped. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about this," I said, pulling a folded document from my pocket. It was the original deed to my house, clearly showing my name as the sole owner. "And this," I added, producing a cancelled check from my down payment, dated 20 years prior. "And finally this." I held up a power of attorney document, signed and notarized. "This gives me the legal right to manage my own affairs, something I clearly seem capable of doing, given that I've managed to keep this house for 2 decades without your help." Amanda's face paled. Mr. Henderson's smug smile vanished. He stammered, "But your daughter-in-law said." "My daughter-in-law," I interrupted, my voice laced with ice, "has a habit of saying things that aren't true." Perhaps she thought she could take advantage of a grieving widow, someone she perceived as vulnerable. She clearly underestimated me. I turned to Amanda, my gaze unwavering. "You thought you could manipulate me, humiliate me, and steal my home. You thought you could convince everyone I was senile and take everything I own." Amanda opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "You're not getting this house, Amanda," I stated firmly, "and you're not getting a cent of my money. Now I suggest you both leave before I call the police and report this attempted fraud." Mr. Henderson quickly gathered his papers, his face flushed with embarrassment. He practically scurried out the door, Amanda trailing behind him, her face a mask of shock and disbelief. I watched them go, a sense of calm washing over me. The fight was far from over, but I had won this battle, and I knew, with a chilling certainty, that the next one would be even more decisive. I had a few more surprises up my sleeve, especially concerning that inheritance they seemed so eager to get their hands on. After all, Christmas was just around the corner. The morning after the wedding, sunlight streamed into my living room, a stark contrast to the shadows that had settled in my heart. "You're lucky we even let you stay in this house," Mom, Amanda had sneered the night before, her eyes glinting with something I couldn't quite place. Something colder than simple annoyance. "After all, Michael and I will need it soon enough." Julian had just stood there nodding along, as if agreeing with every cruel word. I clutched my mug of tea, the warmth doing little to chase away the chill that had settled deep within me. The sheer audacity of it all still stung. My own house. The house I had paid for, brick by brick, over 30 years. "We'll be discussing things further tomorrow," Mom, Amanda had added, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Be ready." I paced the length of the living room, the floral rug I'd inherited from my own mother soft beneath my feet. 30 years of memories within these walls. Birthdays, holidays, quiet evenings with my late husband David. Now, it was all threatened by my own son's wife. "I'll make breakfast," Michael mumbled that morning, avoiding my gaze. "Scrambled eggs, okay." He'd always been a quiet boy, but this silence felt different, heavy with a guilt he couldn't mask. I just nodded, unable to stomach the thought of food. The thought of losing this house, of being forced out, was unbearable. This wasn't just a house. It was my sanctuary, my legacy. "I won't let them take this from me," I whispered, a new resolve hardening in my voice. I crossed to the antique desk that had belonged to David, running my hand over the smooth, worn wood. Inside the top drawer, beneath a stack of old photographs, lay the documents, the deed to the house, clear as day, with my name printed on it, and next to it, the canceled check, proof of the final payment I had made years ago. I pulled them out, the paper crinkling softly in the quiet room. I also retrieved another document, the one I had foolishly signed just a few weeks ago, a power of attorney granting Michael temporary control over my finances while I recovered from a minor surgery. "Just a precaution, Mom," he had said, "in case you need anything while you're still a little unsteady." At the time, it seemed like a sensible precaution. Now, I saw it for what it truly was, a weapon Amanda planned to use against me. I spent the morning poring over the documents, my mind racing. There had to be a way out of this, a way to prove that Amanda and Julian were trying to manipulate me, to steal what was rightfully mine. The phone rang, startling me. It was Amanda. "Mom," she began, her voice saccharine sweet. "Julian and I were thinking, perhaps it's time we had that little chat." I could hear the smugness in her tone, the barely concealed triumph. She clearly thought she had already won. "Yes," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Come over whenever you're ready." I knew exactly what I needed to do. A few hours later, Amanda and Julian arrived, their faces radiating a self-satisfied glow. They sat on the plush sofa, Amanda smoothing down her skirt as if she already owned the place. Julian, as always, remained silent, his gaze fixed somewhere over my shoulder. "So, Mom," Amanda began, her voice laced with false concern, "we've been thinking about your situation." She paused, searching for the right word. Your forgetfulness. Forgetfulness. The word hung in the air, a blatant lie designed to undermine me. I understand you're concerned, I replied calmly, meeting her gaze directly. But I assure you, my memory is perfectly fine. Of course, Amanda said quickly, waving a dismissive hand. But still, it's best to be prepared, isn't it? We've found a lovely assisted living facility, just a short drive away. She smiled, a tight, predatory smile. It has excellent care, and you'll be so much more comfortable there. Comfortable? I echoed, my voice dripping with irony. Yes, I imagine you would be quite comfortable knowing I was tucked away somewhere, unable to interfere. Amanda's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered. Don't be silly, Mom. We're just looking out for you. Are you? I asked, my voice rising slightly. Or are you looking out for yourselves? Looking forward to moving into this house, spending my money? Julian shifted uncomfortably, finally meeting my gaze. He opened his mouth to speak, but Amanda cut him off. That's enough, Mom, she said sharply. We're not here to argue. We're here to help. Help yourselves, you mean, I retorted, my voice now filled with steel. Well, I have some news for you, Amanda. You're not getting this house, and you're not getting my money. I reached into the desk drawer and pulled out the documents, laying them on the coffee table. The deed, the canceled check, the power of attorney. Amanda's eyes widened, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. What are these? She stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Proof, I said, my voice ringing with triumph. Proof that this house is mine, and mine alone. Proof that I paid for it myself, and that I am perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. I looked at Michael, his face pale and drawn. And as for this power of attorney, I continued, tearing the document in half. Consider it revoked. The silence in the room was thick with tension. Amanda and Julian stared at the torn pieces of paper, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. I had taken back control. I had protected my home, my legacy. But the fight wasn't over yet. I knew this was just the beginning. There was still the matter of the inheritance, and I had a plan for that too. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was the afternoon after the wedding, and the house felt strangely empty. Amanda's words, "You're lucky we're even letting you stay here, considering your situation," echoed in the silence. I sat on the edge of my bed, the floral comforter still rumpled from a sleepless night. My hands trembled as I reached for the small, antique wooden box I kept tucked away in my closet. It held memories, photographs, and most importantly, documents. Documents Amanda and Julian clearly hadn't accounted for. They think I'm senile, I muttered to myself, a flicker of anger warming my chilled veins. They think I've forgotten. I lifted the lid, the hinges creaking a mournful tune. Inside, nestled amongst yellowed letters and faded pictures, were the papers, the original deed to this house, my house, purchased with my own hard-earned money years before Michael was even born. Amanda's smug face flashed before my eyes. "Mom, really? You need to be more careful with these things," she'd said just last week, her hand hovering over the box, as if she had every right to take it from me. "It's for your own good. I know where my important papers are, dear, I'd replied, my voice steadier than I felt. I carefully unfolded the deed, the crisp paper crinkling in the quiet. There it was in black and white, my name, Dorothy Miller, listed as the sole owner. They'll see, I whispered, a newfound strength coursing through me. They'll see who's really in control. Beneath the deed was another document, a cancelled check, the proof of payment for the down payment on this house. It was a substantial sum, a testament to my years of careful saving and investing. Amanda's dismissive tone when discussing my finances rang in my ears. Don't you worry your pretty little head about money, Mom. Julian and I will take care of everything. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Take care of everything, indeed. I found another crucial piece of the puzzle tucked away in a small, sealed envelope. My power of attorney, granting Michael, my son, the right to manage my affairs should I become incapacitated. I hadn't needed it then, and I certainly didn't need it now. But it was a safety net, a precaution I'd taken years ago. Michael's a good boy, I murmured, my voice softening with a mixture of affection and disappointment. He just lets Amanda walk all over him. I remembered the conversation I'd had with Michael just a few months ago when Amanda first suggested I move into assisted living. It's for the best, Mom, he'd said, avoiding my gaze. Amanda says you're starting to forget things. Forget things? I'd forgotten more than they'd ever know. I'd forgotten to mention the separate account, the one I'd quietly built over the years, the one Amanda and Julian knew nothing about. It held enough to ensure my comfort and independence, far from their grasping hands. It was my secret, my security, my ultimate revenge. They want to play games? I asked the empty room, a steely glint in my eyes. I can play games too. I carefully replaced the documents in the box, my heart pounding with a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. This was it. This was the beginning of my fight back. I wasn't the doddering old woman they thought I was. I was Dorothy Miller, and I wasn't going down without a fight. I stood up, smoothing down my dress, a plan starting to form in my mind. I needed to be strategic, careful. I needed to make them believe they were winning, right up until the moment they weren't. I needed to find the right time, the right place, to reveal my hand, and I knew just the occasion. Amanda thinks she's so clever, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. She has no idea what's coming. The Christmas holidays were just around the corner, and I had a feeling this year's celebration would be one they'd never forget. Sunlight streamed through the living room window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was a stark contrast to the shadows that had settled over my heart just hours before my son Michael's wedding. Amanda, radiating a sickly sweet smile, placed a folder on the coffee table. Now, Dorothy, she began, her voice dripping with false concern. Michael and I are worried about you. You seemed a little confused at the reception. Confused? I was humiliated, furious. I'm perfectly fine, Amanda, I retorted, my voice clipped, just tired from all the excitement. She exchanged a glance with Julian, who was perched on the arm of the sofa, a smug look plastered on his face. That's exactly what we mean, Julian chimed in, his tone condescending. We think it's time you had some extra help. Help? I asked, raising an eyebrow. What kind of help? Amanda opened the folder, revealing a sheaf of legal documents. "We've consulted with a lawyer," she explained, her voice now taking on a sharper edge, "and we think it's best if you move into Sunny Pines assisted living." My blood ran cold. Sunny Pines. That dreary place on the edge of town. Assisted living. I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't need assisted living." "But Dorothy," Michael interjected, his voice wavering slightly, "you keep forgetting things. Like that check you wrote for the caterer. The one you said you'd already paid." My mind flashed back to the wedding reception, Amanda's grand pronouncements about my supposed forgetfulness, the whispers and stares of the guests. This wasn't about concern. It was about control, about my house, about my money. "I didn't forget anything, Michael," I said, my voice hardening. "Amanda knows that." Amanda's smile faltered. "Dorothy, we're just trying to help you," she insisted, her voice tight. "This is for your own good." She pushed the folder towards me. "Just sign these papers, and everything will be taken care of." I stared down at the documents, a wave of nausea washing over me. This was it. They thought they had me cornered, thought they could just waltz in and steal my home, my life, but they were wrong. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm not signing anything," I declared, my voice firm. Amanda's eyes widened in surprise. "What?" she sputtered. Julian straightened up, his smug expression replaced by a flicker of unease. "You have to sign," he said, his voice losing some of its smoothness. "It's for the best." I reached into the drawer of the end table, pulling out a folder of my own. I placed it on the coffee table next to Amanda's. "I think you should take a look at these first," I said, my voice calm and steady. Amanda and Julian exchanged a puzzled look before opening the folder. Inside were the original deed to my house, the cancelled check for the caterer, and, most importantly, the power of attorney document I had revoked just weeks before, naming my sister, not Michael, as my legal representative. Amanda's face drained of color. Julian's jaw dropped. Michael looked from me to the documents, his eyes wide with confusion. What is this?" he stammered. I don't understand." "It's quite simple, Michael," I said, my voice laced with a touch of ice. "This is proof that I own this house, that I paid the caterer, and that you and Amanda have no legal authority over my affairs." Amanda's eyes darted to Julian, panic etched on her face. But the lawyer," she stammered. "He said I cut her off." "Your lawyer made a mistake," I stated, my voice unwavering. "A very costly mistake." I looked directly at Amanda, my gaze unwavering. "You thought you could manipulate me, take advantage of my age and kindness. You thought you could humiliate me in front of my friends and family and get away with it." My voice rose slightly. "You were wrong." The silence in the room was thick with tension. Amanda and Julian sat frozen, their faces masks of shock and disbelief. Michael looked devastated, caught in the crossfire. "Mom," he began, his voice pleading. I didn't know." I raised a hand, silencing him. "I'll deal with you later, Michael," I said, my voice cold. "Right now, I have something to say to your wife." I turned my attention back to Amanda. "You wanted this house, didn't you?" I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. You thought you could just waltz in here and take over, like you did with my son's life. I leaned forward, my eyes boring into hers. Well, let me tell you something, Amanda. This house is mine, and it will stay mine. You and your husband can find somewhere else to live. I stood up, my gaze sweeping over the stunned faces of my son and his wife. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a Christmas cruise to book. Alone. The look of utter defeat on Amanda's face was almost satisfying. Almost. Sunlight streamed through the living room window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was the afternoon after the wedding, and the house felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. I could still hear Amanda's voice, sharp and condescending, from the reception. Mom seems a little forgetful these days. We're just so worried about her managing such a big house all alone. Julian had nodded along, that simpering smile plastered on his face. Now, they were both sitting on my floral sofa, stiff and uncomfortable. So, Mom, Amanda began, her voice sickly sweet, we've been talking, and we're really concerned about you. I sipped my tea, letting the silence hang in the air. Concerned, I asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, dear, Julian chimed in, about your memory, and the upkeep of this house. It's a lot for someone your age. My blood ran cold, but I maintained a calm facade. I assure you, my memory is just fine. And this house, I gestured around the room, has been my home for 30 years. I'm perfectly capable of managing it. Amanda exchanged a look with Julian, a smug little glance that sent a shiver down my spine. That's what you say, Mom, Amanda said, her tone hardening. But we've spoken to a lawyer. He's explained our options. For your own good, of course. She pulled a folder from her purse and slid it across the coffee table towards me. We think it's best if you move into Sunny Pines Assisted Living. It's a lovely facility, top-rated. We've already looked into it. She smiled again, a tight, predatory smile. And well, since you won't be needing the house anymore, my hand trembled as I reached for the folder. Inside were brochures for Sunny Pines, along with legal documents. My eyes scanned the papers, my heart pounding in my chest. It was a petition for guardianship, citing my supposed declining mental state and inability to manage my affairs. They were trying to take my house, my home, everything I had worked for. I looked up at them, my gaze steady. You've gone to a lot of trouble, I said quietly, but I think you've overlooked something. Amanda scoffed. Oh, really? And what's that, Mom? I reached into the drawer of the end table beside me and pulled out a small, worn leather-bound book. It was my father's old ledger, where he kept meticulous records of everything. Inside, tucked between the pages, were 3 crucial documents: the deed to my house, a cancelled check proving I had paid it off years ago, and, most importantly, a power of attorney document I had prepared months before, anticipating something like this. I laid them out on the table, one by one. This, I said, tapping the deed, is the proof of ownership of this house, free and clear. This, I pointed to the cancelled check, is the confirmation of the final payment. And this, I placed my hand on the power of attorney, gives full control of my finances and legal decisions to will, not to either of you. Amanda's face paled. Julian's jaw dropped. They stared at the documents, their eyes wide with disbelief. But how? Amanda stammered. We were told, the lawyer said. I looked at her, a small, sad smile playing on my lips. You see, Amanda, I'm not as forgetful as you think. I anticipated this. I knew you wouldn't be satisfied with just the wedding gifts. You wanted it all. I picked up the power of attorney and unfolded it. This document appoints my sister, Eleanor, as my legal guardian and grants her full power of attorney. Eleanor, a retired judge, I might add, is waiting just outside. She's quite eager to discuss this misunderstanding you both, and perhaps with your lawyer as well. Just then, the doorbell rang. Amanda and Julian looked at each other, their faces a mixture of shock and fear. I rose from my chair, smoothing down my dress. Shall we? I asked, gesturing towards the door. The color drained from Amanda's face. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Julian just sat there stunned. I walked to the door, opened it, and there stood Eleanor, tall and imposing, a stern expression on her face. Dorothy, she said, her voice crisp and clear. Are these the two? I nodded, stepping aside to let her in. Eleanor's gaze swept over Amanda and Julian, and a chill settled over the room. I believe we have much to discuss, she said, her voice laced with steel. As Eleanor closed the door behind her, the last rays of sunlight faded, casting long shadows across the living room. The quiet returned, but this time it was a different kind of quiet. It was the quiet of victory.